My golden brother knocked up my girlfriend, got her pregnant, my parents kicked me out, and gave him my trust fund set by my grandma for me. But years later, they are asking for help. Before we begin the story, take a moment to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support means the world to our channel and helps us spread more shocking true stories to light. Now, let's get started. Growing up, I never thought my family was perfect, but I assumed they were at least normal. My dad, Arthur, was a 61-year-old bank manager, proud of his position, always reminding everyone about his latest promotion at family gatherings. He was the kind of guy who wore a tie even to a backyard barbecue, who valued people based on their income, and who treated social interactions like networking opportunities. I remember him grilling my high school friends about their parents' jobs, their college plans, as if sizing them up for potential worth. Then there was my mom, Linda, 58 years old, an elementary school teacher. To the outside world, she was warm, nurturing, the kind of woman who volunteered for every PTA event, baked cookies for the entire school, and knew every child's birthday. But behind closed doors, she was a relentless critic. No matter what I did, it wasn't enough. My bed was never perfectly made. A single dish in the sink was an offense. And worst of all, I was never him. Jacob, my younger brother, the golden child. At 26, Jacob could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. He sucked at sports, but they cheered at every game like he was the MVP. When he failed a class, they blamed the teacher. When he got a C, they praised him for having diverse interests beyond academics. Meanwhile, I was pulling straight A's, but instead of celebrating, my parents just asked why I hadn't done extra credit. I worked my ass off, and yet, all I ever heard was, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" The real slap in the face came when I got accepted into a competitive university on a partial scholarship. It should have been a proud moment, a moment where my hard work was finally recognized. Instead, during the family dinner where we should have been celebrating, my parents spent the entire time comforting Jacob. Why? Because he had just failed 2 classes and was on academic probation. Instead of congratulating me, they lectured me about how the education system didn't recognize different types of intelligence and promised to get Jacob a private tutor. My acceptance letter sat on the fridge for exactly 2 days before it mysteriously disappeared. Jacob's participation certificate for junior varsity baseball, that thing stayed up for 3 years. That was the moment I realized something painful but undeniable. I was never going to be their priority. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. I left to build my own life, but the pain followed me. By the time I turned 18, I knew one thing for sure. I had to get the hell away from my family. I didn't join the military because I was patriotic. I joined because I was desperate. College was expensive, and even though my dad had a solid bank job, they always claimed their financial help was based on need. Somehow, Jacob always needed more. So, while my younger brother was handed every opportunity, I enlisted as a combat medic. For years. 2 deployments to Afghanistan. Those years were the hardest of my life, but weirdly, also the most straightforward. See, in combat, everything is clear. You know who's on your side. You know your mission. You know what success looks like. No mind games. No shifting expectations. No golden child to compete with. Just you, your training, and the guys who depended on you. I came back with a messed up knee and memories I don't talk about at parties. The knee injury happened during a medical evacuation under fire. Nothing heroic, just bad luck and rough terrain. But the memories? Those stay with you. Once you've held a dying 19-year-old's insides in place while waiting for a medevac chopper, it's hard to get worked up about trivial things. Traffic? Deadlines? Petty arguments? None of that mattered anymore. When I finally came home, I barely got a nod from my parents. My dad, the man who had never left his cushy office job, joked that I had just put Band-Aids on people. Meanwhile, Jacob was working as a personal trainer at a local gym, and in my dad's eyes, that was a real career. My mom? She acted like my service was just some awkward phase I went through. Like that time Jacob dyed his hair blue in high school. I should have known right then. They were never going to see me. Not really, but at least one person did. My grandmother. She was the only one who ever made me feel valued. When my parents were too busy cheering Jacob's junior varsity games, she was in the front row at my academic awards. When I needed books, she slipped me 20s and told me how proud she was. She passed away while I was deployed. I didn't even get to come home for the funeral. But she left me something. A trust fund. $140,000. Specifically for me, with instructions to help me build a stable life and career. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough. Enough for a down payment on a house. Enough to start my future. For the first time, I felt like I had a chance. So, I enrolled in business school using my VA benefits. I had an idea, something real. I wanted to open a gym for veterans. A place where guys like me, guys who came back with worse injuries than my knee, guys battling PTSD, missing limbs, dealing with traumatic brain injuries, could have a place to rebuild. That's when I met her. Mia. The love, that was never mine. Mia was something else. Dark hair, green eyes, and sharp as hell. She was studying physical therapy, and we met at the VA hospital during one of my checkups. There was something about the way she explained things. Clear, patient, never condescending. She didn't just talk, she listened. And when she placed her hands on my knee, guiding me through an exercise, God help me, I deliberately messed up a couple of times just to feel her touch again. We hit off fast. Within a few months, we were inseparable. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something real. Something that belonged to me. Mia didn't compare me to anyone. She didn't look at me like I was broken. When I talked about my time in Afghanistan, she didn't change the subject or get that uncomfortable look most people did. She asked questions. She wanted to understand the good and the bad. I had never had that before. So after 8 months, we moved in together. I even introduced her to my family, something I rarely did with women I dated. My mom, as expected, was her usual passive-aggressive self. Oh, you're a physical therapist? That's nice. Jacob's girlfriend is in medical school, you know. She wasn't. She worked part-time as a receptionist at a dermatologist's office and mentioned maybe applying to nursing school one day. And Jacob? Looking back, the signs were all there. He was too friendly, always managing to sit next to Mia at family dinners, always steering conversations toward physical therapy so he could show off, always finding little excuses to touch her arm when talking. I should have seen it. I should have known, but I didn't, because I was grateful. Grateful that my golden child brother was finally showing an interest in my life. Grateful that he actually wanted to spend time at our apartment, stopping by with beer or takeout whenever I mentioned having late classes or extra shifts at the gym. I thought he was supporting me. Jesus, I was so naive, because all that time, while I was planning our future, while I was saving for a house, while I was picking out a goddamn engagement ring, Jacob and Mia were laughing behind my back. 8 months. That's how long my brother had been screwing my girlfriend. And I didn't find out until the night I was going to propose. The night my world fell apart. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special. My last client at the gym canceled, so I got off work early. I decided to surprise Mia. I picked up takeout from that Thai place she loved, grabbed a bottle of wine, thinking we'd have a nice, quiet night together. Maybe even the night. The night I'd finally ask her to marry me. The ring was in my pocket. A small sapphire instead of a diamond. Because once, months ago, she'd casually mentioned she loved the color. I was so goddamn in love with her. Pulling into our apartment complex, I noticed Jacob's Jeep parked outside. His obnoxious, lifted Jeep, the one my parents helped him buy while I was dodging bullets overseas. For a second, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe he was dropping something off. Maybe he was being helpful for once in his goddamn life. Then I heard it. Mia's laugh. Jacob's voice low, intimate. Then silence. And in that moment, right before everything collapsed, my brain tried to protect me. Maybe they were watching a movie. Maybe they were planning a surprise for me. Maybe it was nothing. Because the mind will do anything to avoid the truth. I unlocked the door as quietly as I could. The takeout bag felt heavy in my hand, a ridiculous, useless detail that I fixated on. Because some part of me already knew. And then I saw them. On the couch. The couch I'd saved up 3 months to buy. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Except the car was my relationship, and the crash was my brother's dick inside my girlfriend. I don't remember dropping the food. I don't remember the exact words I shouted. But I do remember Jacob's face. Not guilty. Not ashamed, just annoyed at being interrupted. And Mia? Scrambling to cover herself, tears already forming. But not tears of shame. No, tears of getting caught. How long? It was all I could manage to ask. Jacob had the audacity to sigh. Bro, calm down. Like I had just walked in on him eating my leftovers. Not my girlfriend. And Mia? Voice shaking, barely a whisper. 8 months. 8 months. Nearly our entire relationship. While I was planning a future, looking at houses, saving up, picking out a goddamn engagement ring. They were doing this. Every time Jacob randomly stopped by. Every time Mia's phone lit up with a text, and she smiled to herself. Every time she was too tired or not in the mood for me. It all suddenly made perfect sense, and I snapped. I grabbed Jacob by the throat and slammed him against the wall. People always thought he was the athletic one, but 4 years of military training, of hauling wounded soldiers through the mountains, I was stronger than he'd ever be. For a split second, I saw the fear in his eyes. I could have crushed his windpipe right there. I wanted to feel the smug drain out of him along with his oxygen. But instead, I let go. Not because he didn't deserve it, because he wasn't worth it. Get out. My voice was eerily calm. Both of you. Now. Mia started sobbing. It just happened. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hear it. Ow. Jacob, the spineless prick, just zipped up his pants, grabbed his clothes, and left. No apology. No explanation. The last thing he said? I'll call you later. To her. Not me. Like they had plans to discuss this, to strategize how to handle the fallout. I spent that night destroying everything in the apartment that reminded me of them. I don't remember punching the wall, but I must have because my knuckles were bleeding. The neighbors called the cops because of the noise. 2 officers showed up. One of them, older, asked if I was a veteran. When I said yes, he just nodded. He didn't arrest me. He just handed me a card for the VA crisis line and said, "Get help before you do something you'll regret." Decent guy. I still have that card somewhere. But the next day, that's when the real betrayal started. Because my mother called. Not to check if I was okay. Not to tell me she was disgusted with Jacob. No. She called to tell me to calm down. My parents chose him, again. The next morning, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But when I saw Mom on the caller ID, some part of me, some pathetic, broken part of me, thought maybe, just maybe, she was calling to say she was disgusted with Jacob. That she was on my side. I should have known better. Jason, you need to calm down. Calm down. I laughed. A cold, bitter sound. Calm down. I repeated. He was screwing my girlfriend for 8 months, Mom. These things happen, she said, like we were talking about a parking ticket. Adults handle them maturely. Are you hearing yourself? He didn't steal my leftovers. He stole my goddamn relationship. She sighed like I was the exhausting one. Jason, you can't help who you fall in love with. Love. My voice was deadly calm now. You're calling what they did love. They didn't mean to hurt you, she said, like that was supposed to make it better. But they're together now, and you're going to have to accept that. We're still family, and I expect you to behave civilly at dinner this Sunday. That did it. That broke something in me. I started laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was the single most insane thing I had ever heard in my life. You expect me to sit across from them at dinner? Are you out of your goddamn mind? Her voice sharpened. Don't use that language with me, young man. Your father and I raised you better than that. I barked out another humorless laugh. Oh, but apparently you didn't raise Jacob for shit, huh? She gasped like that was somehow the worst thing said in this conversation. Jason, she scolded. Jacob has always been sensitive. You know that. He feels terrible about hurting you, but he can't help how he feels. Mia is special to him. And that's when it clicked. They weren't just excusing what Jacob did. They were supporting it. And what about how I feel? I asked, my voice like ice. What about the fact that I was going to propose to her? That I thought she was the one? Silence. Then, a hesitant voice. You were going to propose? Like it had never even crossed her mind that my feelings mattered. And then, as if it was some sort of relief, she said, well, sweetheart, maybe this is for the best then. Before you made a commitment you'd regret. My vision blurred. Let me get this straight. My voice was eerily calm. Mia cheating on me with my brother for nearly a year doesn't make her a terrible person. It just means she wasn't the right one for me. My mother cleared her throat. Jason, you need to be an adult about this. When you're ready to be reasonable, we'll welcome you back. You know what? I said, don't bother. And I hung up. Then I blocked her number. The next few days were a blur of rage and betrayal. My father texted, telling me I was tearing the family apart with my overreaction. Jacob had the nerve to text, saying he hoped we could still be brothers because family is forever. Mia sent a 4-page email about how complicated emotions can be and how she never meant to hurt me. I deleted them all without reading to the end. Then I packed my bags and left, because I couldn't live in that apartment anymore. Everywhere I looked, I saw them. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined them. I broke my lease, forfeited my security deposit, and found a tiny studio apartment across town. It was small. It was shitty, but it was mine. My military buddies checked in. A couple of them even offered to go talk some sense into Jacob, which was their way of offering to beat the shit out of him. I appreciated the loyalty, but I turned them down because I wasn't done being angry yet. And I knew there was something worse than violence. Something Jacob and my parents would feel far more than a black eye. Karma. They stole my future. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of grinding at work, drowning myself in school, trying not to think about them. Then I got an email from my bank. At first I thought it was spam, some generic notification. But when I opened it, my entire body went cold. The trust fund my grandmother left me, the $140,000 meant to help me start my life, was gone. Every last dollar. I called the bank in a panic, praying it was some kind of mistake. It wasn't. My father, as co-trustee, had legally withdrawn the money. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, the banker told me. Your father had access under the trust's family emergency clause. I felt like I was going to be sick. An emergency? What goddamn emergency? I already knew the answer before I even got in my car. I drove straight to my parents' house, adrenaline burning through my veins. When I pulled up, I saw Jacob's Jeep in the driveway, next to a brand new Honda CR-V. And through the living room window, a party. Wine glasses clinking. Laughter. A group of people gathered around the coffee table, staring at a stack of papers. House listings. My hands were shaking as I pounded on the door. When my father answered, he looked annoyed. Jason, this isn't the time. I shoved past him. Where's my money? I demanded. Silence. My mother sat on the couch, fake smiling at Mia's parents. Mia sat next to Jacob, avoiding my gaze. And on her left hand, a diamond ring. Not a sapphire. Not the one I had planned to give her. A diamond. Bought with my money. I turned to my father. What the hell is this? I gestured to the house listings. The celebration. The engagement ring. He straightened his tie, always keeping up appearances. Lower your voice. We have guests. I barked out a laugh. You have guests? I have a stolen trust fund. Jacob finally spoke up, leaning back smugly. Look, Jace, I know this is awkward. Awkward. Like he had borrowed my car without asking. Like he had eaten my leftovers. Not stolen my girlfriend and my goddamn future. I turned to my mother. You let this happen. She sipped her wine and exhaled dramatically, like I was exhausting her. Jason, it's not like that. The money was always meant to help both of you. Jacob and Mia are starting a family. They needed a stable home. My ears were ringing. A family? I turned to Mia. You're pregnant? She nodded, tears in her eyes. 3 months. I did the math in my head. She had been cheating for 8 months. 3 months pregnant. There was a chance she had been sleeping with both of us when she got knocked up. I swallowed back the bile rising in my throat. Is it even his? I asked coldly. A sharp slap cracked through the air. My mother. Her face was twisted in rage. How dare you, she snapped. After everything we've done for you, everything they had done for me. I took a slow, deep breath. And then, voice calm as death, I asked. Tell me something, Dad. How much of my trust fund did you steal to pay for their house? He shifted uncomfortably. I looked at the papers on the coffee table. The down payment amount was $120,000. You used my grandmother's money to buy Jacob and Mia a house. My voice was eerily steady. Not just any house. A house I wouldn't even have been able to afford for myself. My father squared his shoulders. We didn't steal anything. That money was always meant to help you both start your lives. This was a necessary investment in Jacob's future. Jacob's future, not mine. Never mind. I exhaled sharply. You know what? I said, nodding slowly. You all deserve each other. Jacob tried to reach out, putting his hand on my arm. Come on, man, don't be like this. I looked down at his hand, then at him. Touch me again, and I'll break every finger you use to make a living. For the first time in his entire life, Jacob looked scared. I turned to leave. You're not welcome here, my mother called after me. Not until you can be happy for your brother's blessings. I paused at the doorway, glancing over my shoulder. Then I guess I'm never coming back. And I walked out. That night, I packed my bags. The next morning, I withdrew from school. By the end of the week, I was gone. And I never looked back. I left and built a life without them. I disappeared, not in the dramatic, off-the-grid kind of way. I just made myself impossible to reach. I withdrew from school, broke my lease, and moved to another state. I re-enlisted, not because it was the best decision, but because I needed distance. I needed to be somewhere where no one could find me, where no one could ask me to be reasonable about what had happened. The military was hell, but at least it was honest. And while I was gone, my family, they thrived. Jacob and Mia got married. My stolen trust fund helped them put a down payment on their new home. My parents bragged about the wedding to anyone who would listen, as if their son hadn't cheated on his own brother with his fiancée. But the thing about life? It keeps moving. And while they were celebrating their stolen happiness, I was rebuilding. After finishing my second enlistment, I went back to school, this time on my own terms. I earned my business degree, then got my master's in health administration. That's where I met Marcus, a former logistics officer, sharp as hell. He had the same vision I did, a wellness center built for veterans by people who actually understood what we'd been through. We put everything we had into it. We secured funding, got grants, opened our first location, a gym, physical therapy clinic, and counseling center all in one. And it worked. Within 3 years, we had 4 locations. We were expanding nationally. We built something real, something that helped people, something that belonged to me. And unlike my brother, I had earned every single piece of it. They came crawling back. I hadn't heard from my family in 5 years. Not once. I never checked up on them. Never looked at Jacob or Mia's social media. Never drove past the house they stole from me. As far as I was concerned, they didn't exist. Until one random afternoon, when my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered out of habit, and for the first time in years, I heard my mother's voice. Jason, please don't hang up. She sounded older, tired, almost desperate. I should have hung up, but curiosity kept me on the line. What do you want? I asked, my voice neutral. She exhaled shakily. It's so good to hear your voice. We've missed you so much. Cut the bullshit, Mom. What do you want? She sighed, the fake warmth dropping. We need your help. The family is in trouble. The family. I didn't have a family. Sounds like a personal problem, I said coldly. She pushed forward, voice trembling. Your father lost his job 3 years ago. The bank downsized. At his age, no one else would hire him. We've been living on his pension, but it's not enough. And this concerns me. How exactly? She kept talking, desperate now. Jason, Jacob and Mia are struggling too. They have 3 kids now. Jacob tore his rotator cuff. He can't work as a trainer anymore. He got hooked on painkillers. He's been in and out of rehab. They're behind on their mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The golden child. The one who was handed everything. The one who stole my future. Now he was drowning. And I was the only one who could save him. Let me get this straight, I said, still amused. You want me to help the people who betrayed me? Who stole from me? Who kicked me out of the family? Because we're blood, she said, almost pleading. Despite everything, we're still your family. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Family, I repeated. You know, I learned a lot about family in the last 5 years. Real family has your back. Real family respects you. Real family doesn't steal your inheritance to give to the brother who screwed your fiancé. Silence. Then her voice cracked. We made mistakes. I almost felt something. Almost. But then I remembered everything. The way they had looked at me that night. Like I was the problem for being angry. Like I was overreacting to the betrayal. And suddenly, I felt nothing at all. You made your choices, I said simply. Now you get to live with them. Jason, please. Goodbye, Mom. And I hung up. Karma. Serve cold. A week later, I got a text from Jacob. Mom told me she called you. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but please, if not for me, then for my kids. They don't deserve to suffer because of my mistakes. I'm begging you, brother. Brother. Like that word meant something. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. The following week, I got an email from my father. A detailed breakdown of their financial situation. The medical bills. The pending foreclosure. Attached were photos of Jacob's kids. 3 innocent children, none of whom asked to be born into this mess. I almost felt guilty. Almost. Then I read the final line of my father's email. We're not asking for a handout, son. Just a chance to make things right. To be a family again. A family. A family that had thrown me away the second it was convenient. I read it once. Then I deleted it. Blocked their numbers. Blocked their emails. And never looked back. 6 months later, I saw an article in my hometown's online newspaper. Their house, the one they bought with my stolen trust fund, had been foreclosed on. My parents had filed for bankruptcy. Jacob and Mia had moved out of state to live with her parents. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not regret. Not guilt. Just peace. Because for the first time in my life, I knew I owed them nothing. The best revenge? Living well. One night, my fiancée, Sarah, found me standing on the balcony of our house, staring at the city lights. You okay? She asked, wrapping her arms around me. Yeah, I said. My mother called. They're struggling. They wanted my help. She didn't ask if I was going to. She already knew the answer. And what are you thinking? She asked. I took a deep breath. That karma's a bitch. Sarah smiled. And the best revenge? I turned to her, kissing the top of her head. Living well. And that night, I slept better than I had in years. Because finally, I was free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.